And we're live reviewing the episode in the title, and we just started now because Jeff was about to make an interesting point about the guest star of this episode.
This is Homicide, Life on the Street, for episode 7. Though it was actually aired as episode 4. So it was a bit confusing when they ran it in broadcast order because they aired this one before the Doll's Eyes episode. But anyway, it originally aired November 10th, 1995 on NBC. Was a Jorge Zamacona, Tom Fontana, and Henry Brommel, and directed by Tim Hunter, who is one of those that directed several Homicide episodes. But this one is a bit unique in that it features sort of a voiceover from the killer, and the closest we've had to that before was the Gas Man, but even that, it wasn't really narration, but you had something sort of from the perspective of the criminal. But this was obviously a little bit different than that. And of course, you had some uses of, camera techniques and things like, different color, like a washed out color for the film, and slow motion, things like that. So there were some different kind of camera tricks and things used in this episode that were unique to it. But yeah, I did want to talk about the guest star, but I'll read the recap first here because it may even say, but anyway, Jeffrey Donovan is the main guest star in this episode that some in the audience may know from several different things, including Burn Notice, in which he was the main character. That's what Morgan recognized him from when he watched this episode the first time, because he had seen a lot of that show. Anyway, the episode opens up with a man seen carrying a rifle, extracting money out of a blood-spattered cash register. Throughout the opening scene, during the robbery, and even driving up 195, the criminal can be heard talking to himself, usually about his troubled childhood. Talking to himself, anyway. This freak, which enjoys sucking in the last breath of his victims, can be heard saying, "You don't have to be afraid of the things that go bump in the night if you become the thing that lurks in the darkness." Pembleton and Bayliss are in their squad car hitched to the back of a tow truck. A miserable Pembleton is talking to Bayliss about his pregnant, morning sickness wife when he gets paged. And see, this part of the recap says, the gas leak has been attended to, and Giardello's crew is back in the familiar building. Because, that had already happened. But anyway, Pembleton and Bayliss are called into G's office, where FBI agent Steve Van Brandt is waiting. Van Brandt informs the detectives that a troubled serial killer is headed their way up I-95. So far, this lunatic, who Van Brandt says was most likely abused as a child, has killed 5 people in under a day. The serial killer is slated to be in the area at around dinner time. Pembleton and Bayliss arrive at the scene of the serial killer's 6th killing in less than a day and find a body shot in a bathroom stall. The detectives come to the realization that the serial killer is leaving a body in every state. Realizing that the killer frequents gas stations, the detectives calculate that he will need a new tank of gas in roughly 5.5 hours. The serial killer is seen picking up a female hitchhiker. Realizing he needs gas soon, he asks her if she has gas money. She does, and enters his pickup truck. The hitchhiker notices someone lying underneath a blanket in the back of the truck. The killer mentions that that's just his brother. Pembleton and Bayliss get Russer to authorize putting a roadblock on the highway as a state trooper has spotted a pickup truck matching the description on I-95. The roadblock is a giant truck flipped over on its side. The 2 detectives pose as truckers at the side of the road. The serial killer spots the roadblock from a ways back and decides to leave his truck in the middle of the road and flee the area. A man matching the serial killer's description is seen in the back seat of an elderly woman's car. The suspect, now at the precinct, is in the box with Pembleton and Bayliss. The suspect is relentless and refuses to admit to the killings, all the while he keeps mentioning someone else who was killed. The detectives think that the suspect is just petitioning for an insanity defense and leave the box realizing they have him on camera at various gas stations. This episode ends with Bayliss getting a call from someone who repeatedly says, "You got the wrong guy." Just then, a gunshot is heard. Detectives arrive at a gas station where they see a man with the same features as the suspected killer. It's his twin brother. So,
well, they left that detail out, didn't they?
That's a poorly written recap, but let's see what David B226 Morris had to say about it. If A Doll's Eyes represented the best aspects of Homicide, Thrill of the Kill represented the weakest part of the new series.
Ooh.
Qualities of this episode, one cannot understand why NBC was so hyped by it that they ran it out of sequence in time for the November sweeps. Not only is it a vastly inferior episode, it is not even very good television by the standards of normal television, mainly because of a couple of major logical flaws. The story involves a serial killer who, starting in Florida, begins driving north down the interstate, passengers every time that he stops for gas. The FBI learns about a murder in Virginia, which isn't that far from Maryland, yet somehow Bayliss and Pembleton have time to talk to the FBI, practice at the firing range, drive to the crime scene, interrogate witnesses, and drive back to Baltimore well before the killer arrives. This is a hole in the plot big enough to drive a pickup through, but nobody in the show says anything about it. The second flaw is more of a problem of being able to suspend disbelief. Bayliss and Pembleton eventually catch up with their suspect, Newton Dell, a man with a string of priors and a borderline sociopath. He denies that he committed the murders, saying that he told him not to do it. In the denouement, it is revealed that him is Newton's twin brother. This means that Newton rode in the same car with his brother and did absolutely nothing to prevent him from committing the murders, other than tell him that it was wrong. I didn't believe this when I first saw the episode 6 years ago, and I can't believe it now. This may be the most unsatisfying ending of any case that the show ever did. While the case is not particularly exciting, there are some very interesting character development that make for some interest, though not enough to save the show from being mediocre. Man, he's really passionate. For the first time in the series, we see the detectives doing qualifying for their firing proficiency exam. One part of being a police where Pembleton is less than stellar. He's a very lousy shot. He says that using the gun has always been the part of the job he liked least. In more series, this would be a quirk, meaning little. As it turns out, this foreshadows... Well, okay, I'm going to skip that. More importantly is G's meeting with his oldest daughter, Charisse, making her the first on the show. G is surprisingly nervous about seeing her for the first time in a couple of years and becomes understandably disturbed when she is late to her meeting. This leads to the tensest moment of the entire episode when we are led to suspect, because of the editing, that Charisse has become Dell's victim. It comes as an immense relief to G and to the viewer when she turns up at his house. However, his relief fades when he learns that Charisse is planning to move even further away, all the way to San Francisco, to get married to a man G has never met. G realizes that time, combined with the job that he has, is taking his daughter away from him, and he is understandably disturbed. Yaphet Kotto gets a chance to explore depths that he usually done it. I'm not sure what that means. And he reveals in his speech and his very body language how effective an actor he is. We also learn some more information about G's other two children, which will later turn about to be false, at least in regard to his son. I'm not sure what that means either. There are some tense moments and some funny sequences, including the opening where we see Frank and Tim being towed from a crime scene back to the station. But the writing and pacing of the show seem very ill-suited to the realism and quirkiness of Homicide an episode ago, and closer to a more conventional police drama. In many ways, this is the weakest episode of the fourth season, though unfortunately there will be a couple other claimants to that. My score 4. Okay, so that's what he said. What do you think, Ben?
I think this is going to be the thumbnail.
Oh, okay. That's what I forgot about the strip club. That's what I should have figured. It's kind of blurry, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, when it's a thumbnail, it's only about that big on YouTube.
Yeah, well, I mean, it looks like you have 3 other shots of it. Or is one of them better?
Well, let's go. I mean, we've got this one. We've got that one.
I have to say that she looks pretty fit for a stripper.
Yes, she looks almost like She could be like gone to the gym quite a bit there.
Yeah, she definitely they chose to feature one that probably is not quite the average stripper body, but anyway.
Yeah, sort of like a Playboy. Well, yes.
So Ben,
Right. Yes.
I realize you're a bit preoccupied, but what do you
Yes,
think of the
we're
rest
on
of the
air.
episode?
We're on air. Yes, we're on air. Yes. I was just thinking what you said there about was it realistic casting? You could say it was a high-end dive.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not. You know, I am not a strip club connoisseur, so I can't even testify to that in terms of in person. But I have seen and heard a lot of people talking about such things, and yeah, that's why I made the comment I did. But
Right. Yeah.
anyway, so Mr. Morris was pretty harsh on this one. What did you think of it?
Well, it is probably one of those ones where, having seen the ending and you watch it again, it's probably not got a lot of rewatch value, shall we say. So, but yeah, you do start then asking yourself questions about, well, but he did say that that's his brother sleeping in the back.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see it as big a plot hole as, because they're both mental. So,
Yes.
you know, there's a killer. I mean, they're not exactly using the full deck anyway. Whether he's mental or not, it's not
Right.
not the full show. I like the way it was shot, the cinematography. As you said, the changing the what is it? The color correction, all that kind of stuff, making certain sections a bit blue. None of it was really objectionable. I can see why the network bumped it up, because it did have more action in it, since we're working on a larger scale.
Yeah, no, I that was the one thing. Like, I mean, obviously he's entitled to his opinion about the quality of the episode, but it seems to me that's pretty obvious why they would move this one up, because he himself said in the review he thought it was more like a conventional police drama. Well, that's what the network liked to be able to promote, was things that were in conventional police dramas. So,
and
it'd be like, hey, we've got this serial killer shooting people, and it's a manic chase up the interstate, and you know they could bill it that way.
I wonder if that stripper made it into the promo.
I don't remember. That's too long ago.
It's like when they used to do promos of Star Trek Voyager, they would like 7 of 9 would be in like one scene in the background, in a scene that had nothing to do with the plot, and she would be in the promo.
Yep.
And I only ever saw those when they were put on the DVD, and you know, because we don't see the American promos otherwise.
Yeah, I think on the DVDs for Homicide, they had the first season DVD had some of the promos for the original first episode, but I don't remember if there's any other promos on any of the DVDs. I'd have to check again, but I don't remember seeing any.
I mean,
they do have. Starting with, I think the 5th season, they did have the previously on things that you could select, which was they showed on the original network broadcast. Putting those in, which most of them I skipped when I was watching with Morgan, mainly because they in themselves sort of have spoilers in that they kind of focus you on certain things, like remind you about, oh, hey, remember this guy? And then it's like, well, yeah, he's going to show up in the episode. So I kind of avoided those, but I had to show them a couple of them, especially. There's a particular scene that once we've seen it, I will make fun of the fact that they kept repeating it so many times in the previously on. Once that happens, you'll know what it is, but I can't tell you yet because it hasn't happened yet. It won't happen until next season. So, anyway.
You mean the previously on that's part of the show, or previously on?
Yeah, right at the beginning of the show, when they would say previously on Homicide and show clips of previous episodes that had something to do with the episode they were about to show.
And it was part of that. Wasn't actually part of the. So will this be something that I will see?
Not unless somebody, a particular source that you have, added them to the beginning.
Right.
Because they're not on the DVD. If it's someone is uploading from the DVD, they are a separate file.
Oh. I think they should have added it on.
Well,
then
I actually disagree because, like I said, since it's your first time seeing these,
right.
I kind of think it's better when you don't have those things that kind of, some of them give away too much because they make, even though everything in it has happened before. So if you've seen all the episodes, you would have seen the scenes, but you don't know that particular things are going to be involved with this episode. And so I think it reveals too much.
Right, so
it's too.
Hey, previously,
especially like.
So it's like
there's one.
So relevant to the plot in this episode.
Yeah, that's like that, and there's one that really serves as a pretty major spoiler because, there's somebody who ends up dead. Watching the episode, you don't know who it is until they say who it is. But if you watch the previously on, it's pretty obvious who it's going to be. So that I think was definitely not a good choice to have. So anyway, but that I think I said that in the least spoilerish way possible because obviously there's plenty of characters. We've already had recurring characters or characters that showed up at least once in a previous episode that then were killed later. It happened to that newspaper guy that was friends with G.
I think it was Thor.
So we've already seen that happen. So that in itself isn't a spoiler that will happen again. But anyway, I'm getting away from the topic of this particular episode. But did you take pictures other than the stripper?
Yeah, I've already shown them. I went through them while you were talking.
Oh, okay. I didn't. Of course, I was reading, so I didn't see them. But
I can go through them again.
Well, I sometimes you put them up while we're talking about certain scenes, so it's kind of useful as sort of a visual aid,
Right. So what I did is I put this stuff about here about. I think you talked a bit about him.
Yeah, Jeffery Dolphin. He's been in several TV shows and movies, but in recent years is probably best known for Burn Notice. I liked, I'd say while I'm thinking about it, I did kind of like the thing of making it like the hitchhiker could be G's daughter because we hadn't seen Charisse yet, so we didn't have, we just see a black woman and think, well, this could be his daughter. It was pretty effective, I thought. Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting to me that Tim Hunter, directed this when, it wasn't his first Homicide. And from the way this episode is different, you would kind of think it was the first-time director for Homicide, somebody who was used to doing other stuff and kind of put their own style. So it was kind of interesting that somebody who had previously directed for Homicide would make one that was as different as this one was. But I actually have a different view than Morris did. I actually enjoyed this episode quite a bit. Yes, there are some things that are not extremely logical in it, but as we know, those who know me, logic's not really my number one thing anyway.
Except when you're
So-
reviewing Blade 7.
That's not my number one thing in reviewing Blake 7 either.
Yeah, no. Fair enough.
I mean, I don't know if that was sarcasm, but yeah, I'm definitely not. My thing is never like finding all of the logical flaws with something. It's more like, especially like the more entertaining something is, the less I worry about anything like that. If I'm picking at something for like plot holes, then that means that it just wasn't interesting enough for me to not care about that. Because for the most part, if something is exciting or interesting, I really don't pick apart the things like that. Sometimes something will strike me as silly, but
that would be the case with Doctor Who. Like there would be things in Doctor Who where I would ignore plot holes, but I would pick away big holes in Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah, and with Doctor Who, again, if I'm picking apart stuff in that, it's because something else about the episode, either it's boring, off-putting in some other way that causes me to do that. When I bash my least favorite episode, Kinda, that was because it was like all this weird stuff that wasn't in any way interesting. And once you have that, then I start thinking about all of the things like the bad giant snake effect or whatever, like that. If the story was good, enjoyed it, I wouldn't care that there was a ridiculous looking snake, because to me it would be like, it's enjoyable anyway, so I can forgive him for that. But as it is, it just serves as another stupid thing in a annoying story. So, that's kind of the way I feel with most things. It's like if it's entertaining enough, then I really don't spend time worrying about little things like that. But the things I didn't like about this episode, I didn't really like the voiceover stuff with the killer. I really didn't think that added anything. I mean, I guess in retrospect they were trying to make it where, it's this twist because he was really talking to his brother. And the funny thing is, the twist itself I thought was all right. But it seemed like, I don't know, there was something weak about the setup to it. Like, I guess, it feels like if they were going to do that, it should have been in another episode instead of kind of cramming it at the end of this one. So I guess I thought like the pacing was kind of weird. And that the earlier review I read talked about, these things taking place, like, they only had this amount of time and they were able to do all these other things. And yeah, if they had made it across 2 episodes, it would have made a lot more sense. Or if they showed, like, if the gun range stuff had taken place before they found out about the killer, it did seem a bit odd that they would, like, take a break from this and go, oh, let's go do this while we're waiting for this guy to strike again. That was kind of odd.
It may have been padding, because there was also some music in there. There seemed to be quite a bit of padding in it.
Yeah, so that's what I mean about, like, the pace was weird, because it was like, it was simultaneously they were trying to cram too much stuff into one episode, but also there was kind of a lot of time where it didn't seem like much was really happening. So it was kind of strange. Yeah. It seems
they were
like
probably shot on time.
It probably would have been better to make as a 2-part story, and you could have set up the thing with you could have taken more time to set up the serial killer thing. Had the homicide detectives going about their business, and then they come across it. You could have had the firing range. You could have had the parts with G talking about his daughter's coming, and you could have still had the the suspense of, well, is this G's daughter? You could have done all those things, and then you could have had the second half of it is when they're really increasing the pressure on when they're trying to find him, and and then they could have had those scenes like interviewing the vending machine guy and those things, like that could have led up to the second part. And then you had the scene in the box, and then you have the whole thing with the twist with the brother. So, like, I just feel like the pacing of the story was kind of off. But I still enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't, like I said, I think about these things when I'm, like, analyzing it, but as far as watching it, I still, there wasn't any point in the episode where I was like, oh, I'm not interested in this. I didn't think, even though the acting is fine, the scene with G and his daughter, you know, it wasn't particularly compelling, you know, but within the context of the episode, it wasn't that long a scene, so to me, it didn't really take away from it.
Yeah, that could have been done better. It was all right, but we've seen similar things from him before.
Yeah, I almost think in some ways it's better to hear G talk about his family than to actually see him interacting with them.
Yes.
Because, and you know, you'll see this as the show goes on, his family is not really that interesting.
That's true.
So, you know, they try to sort of make them seem a little more interesting. Like in this, they have the conflict where you can say, okay, she might be an artisan because they kind of play up, well, there's this conflict of, you know, she's kind of spontaneous and she doesn't tell him what she's doing, and she kind of, but, you know, it could be that just compared to him, she seems that way because he's sometimes, but then they don't really, but then they kind of make him appear like he sort of softens up around her. So you don't really see like him, you know, he doesn't really like get super angry at, but we've seen G's temper when he's actually really mad, and he doesn't get that upset in this. So it kind of is like, well, she must have seen him much more upset than that. So it's kind of like she's almost manufacturing a conflict that isn't really there, which, you know, it may be that that's just something that she does, but we never really explore that.
Yeah, so it seems like, I mean, that particular scene, it seemed like that particular scene has been written so many times in American TV drama that it's like that kind of thing.
They don't have that scene in British dramas?
Not really. Well, I don't watch a lot of
them. All daughters get along with their fathers.
No, it's not. No, it's just a particular way. It's maybe it's because it makes me with that particular type of. It does sort of. It's that sort of scene has been written so many times that it's very hard to write that scene well because it's been done so many times. The writers have to try and find a new angle on it because the audience have seen that type of scene so many times, of where it's the man who is like the head of an organization, does a really good job, but doesn't have the time for his family. That type of scene has been done so much.
Yeah, sure. Police drama specifically, you often have things about how, you know, the pressures of the job, even when they're not, you know, they work long hours, but even when they're not at work, it's like they can't completely leave work because everything stays with them. Kind of the continuing theme. Although with some people more than others.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's one of the things I like about Homicide is they show that the cops have different personalities, and there are some that are more affected by their work outside of work than other ones are.
What it reminds me of, there's an episode in Babylon 5 called Gropos. And I thought, what's this, Gropos? And it sounds for ground pounders. And Dr. Stephen Franklin, his father, is a military general. And there's a similar type of theme there. Oh, you didn't have time for me because of your career in the military. That sort of thing. And it's that type of scene that I just see. There's nothing wrong with the scenes in itself. It's just that when you've seen a lot of those scenes, there's something fresh added to it to make it more interesting.
Yeah. They're not exactly breaking new ground.
And the only reason it probably was in there was because they were trying to like set it up that maybe that was his daughter.
Yeah, I mean they were trying to establish some more background for G in some future episodes, things that he has to deal with about his family and stuff like that. So there were character development reasons for it, but yeah, the scene itself is not particularly compelling.
I mean, when he had San Francisco, it's like, could you not choose anywhere further away? I mean, like Alaska or
yeah, Hawaii or something.
Yeah. Yeah, you really do trying to get away from me. I mean, what is it, like 3,000 miles away?
Yeah, something like that.
From Baltimore to San Francisco. Wow. And that was pre-Skype days, folks. So
yeah.
I don't know how much long distance would have been. But yeah,
I don't either.
She didn't have a car phone, so it's not really practical to call him.
She definitely did not seem like a J though.
No.
And she just like, but very similar to what I've said, because there's been times where I've had let's say particular family members get upset at me for not calling, and I've been like, well, I thought it was more important to get there as soon as I could than to stop and call.
Yeah.
And then she forgot that it was supposed to be a lunch meeting. She thought it was dinner. So.
Well.
That's another thing. That's another thing where, like, if it was my mother, for instance, I couldn't forget that because she would have hammered it in my head so many times by then that I wouldn't be able to forget.
Yeah, and people should keep a diary. I mean that's me. I mean that's the INTPs are like wannabe J's, as you call them, where it's they'll make the plan. They won't execute the plan, but they'll make the plan. Yeah. I don't know if your older brother does that, where he'll write down things to do, but not necessarily do them all. So we got to-do lists.
Not actually writing in a long time, because he was on the cutting edge of electronic stuff. Whenever there was the first opportunity there was to electronically enter information, he was on it. So whatever he could get a hold of. So he's long past the days of actually writing by hand things to do. It's all on computer stuff.
I mean, and I used to have this digital diary, right, for like writing.
He had he had a watch that he entered in like way back in the day when he was probably still in high school.
They still sell those now. Casio brought those back out. The calculator databank watch, where you could fit,
he would have
fit
the
about
watch
50 things in the schedule.
He would put alarms or information, reminders on his watch.
So yeah, I mean, it was a Casio databank watch, calculator watch. Was it a Casio databank watch? Because they came out in about 1989, I think. And
yeah, I don't remember any of the specifics of it, but I know that whatever he was able to acquire within the budget he had, because we were never rich or anything, so he wasn't buying the most expensive version of almost anything because he couldn't afford to. But whatever he could acquire, so a lot of his original electronics he got were secondhand from our father, because if he got something new, then the old version would go to one of us. That's how I got my first stereo. Was my dad gave it to me, because same thing with the Walkman, portable radio. Got from my father as well when he. I'm not actually sure he got a replacement of that. He may have just decided he didn't use it enough that he would give it to me. I don't know.
There you go. That's a loving father, folks. When he's finished with something, give it to his sons. Don't buy presents.
Yeah.
Just give them.
Yeah. I remember I saw this one Eddie Murphy. I think it was Eddie Murphy. Routine once upon a time where he was talking about how his father would rewrap old Christmas presents because he knew that the kids stopped playing with them, so he could reintroduce it. And they acted excited like it was a new thing. My father was pretty close to that.
Right.
Anyway,
So we'll leave it.
Back to Thrill of the Kill.
Yeah. So we'll leave it on that high, folks. So it's goodbye from me, and Jeff can wind down himself.
You never told me your score for this one.
I'll give it about I'll give it about a 7.
I would also say 7 because, you know, I like it. I enjoy it overall, but it's not among the best of Homicide. So it's just sort of like it's an enjoyable, you know, somewhat fun episode. There's not a whole lot of the stuff I really like about Homicide, but I do sort of enjoy some features from that at times. So to me, I wasn't as annoyed as Mr. Morris was by that. I just it wasn't among the best, but it still had plenty of enjoyable things in it to me. I liked the vending machine guy and the state patrol dudes. I kind of like the interaction there with Pembleton and kind of his frustration with these other people that aren't cooperating with the way he wants them to and stuff. You know, things like that were kind of amusing to me. So there were a few things from time to time. The seeing Pembleton and Bayliss as truckers, that was pretty fun. I liked those outfits.
Yeah, Pembleton was highly convincing. That's a trucker.
So yeah, there was some. I liked several scenes in it. So yeah, I'd give it a 7 too.
Would you still rather watch this episode though than City at the Edge of the World with Colin Baker as Babe the Berserker?
Yeah, probably, but it's not too far ahead. I think I gave that one a 6 if I remember right. So I would say overall this one's more enjoyable, but not like by a huge margin.
Right. Well, what about Countdown with what's he called? The capable Federation guy.
Provine. Yeah, I can't remember actually if I gave that a 7 or an 8 at the time, but yeah, that was probably the best Blake 7 episode for sure. So that would probably be slightly ahead of this.
Ooh. Right then. So I've already signed off, folks. Now it's up to Jeff.
Okay. Well, join us next time for Sniper.
Ooh. Oh, you could do one of your jokes about Sniper.
No, see, it's not fun when you say you could do a joke. You know, it has to be spontaneous.
Okay. Bye-bye, folks.